The Canon EOS R7 will have a Digic X processor, a 32.5 megapixel APS-C sensor on the RF mount, and wait till you get a load of the video specifications. Details coming up, but first I encourage you to subscribe and choose all notifications so you're kept informed on the latest camera gear, news, and rumors like this R7. This has got to be the most exciting set of specifications for a Canon camera in a long time. And no, I'm not including the R5C because a lot of people didn't like the R5C. I know, I liked it. I thought it was a very good camera. I didn't buy it though. I've got the R5 and I'm pretty happy with it. But the Canon EOS R7, it is the spiritual successor to the 7D Mark II. There was supposed to be a 7D Mark III, just like there was supposed to be a 5D Mark V DSLR, the last DSLR for the 5 series and the last DSLR for the 7 series. Well, we've now got leaked specifications thanks to Canon rumors. So what about processor? Well, it's going to have the Digic X processor, the same processor that debuted in the 1DX Mark III, Canon's flagship DSLR, and that same processor made its way to the Canon R6 and the Canon R5, a camera that I'm shooting with right now. And in terms of sensor, well, it's supposed to have an APS-C sensor for the RF mount. This camera is going to have the RF mount, but that 32.5 megapixel APS-C sensor is a little bit of a hearkening to what we find in the Canon 90D and the M6 Mark II, which also had a 32.5 megapixel sensor. But what sets this APS-C sensor apart from other Canon APS-C sensors, regardless of whether it's mirrorless or DSLR, is that the R7 is supposed to have a backside illuminated sensor. No mention of whether it's stacked or not, but still that's a dramatic departure from previous Canon APS-C cameras, or even full frame. The R5, the R6 doesn't even have a backside illuminated sensor. Now, there's no mention of whether it's stacked or not, but still a definite improvement. But how fast is this going to be? Because a lot of people love this camera, the 7D Mark II. They loved it for wildlife and some sports situations. Would 10 frames per second excite you? Well, if so, you'll be happy to know that it has 20 frames per second. No discussion if that's electronic, mechanical, or anything like that. 20 frames per second, Digic X processor, 32.5 megapixels, APS-C, RF mount sensor. Well, I should say APS-C sensor on the RF mount. Better grammar, right? More correct. The video specs are pretty surprising. 4K up to 60 frames per second, similarity to the R6. 4K 60 frames per second. It's pretty impressive. But it's also going to be able to do Canon Log 3, and that is huge, to be able to get that huge boost in dynamic range. Ever since Canon Log 3 came to the R5, I've been shooting with it for everything, and I got to tell you, the quality of what I'm able to produce, whenever I'm shooting outside, I always shoot Canon Log, and it always looks a whole lot better. It's just absolutely incredible. And if I ever go back to shooting 8-bit outside, it just looks like I'm going back 10 years in technology. Canon Log 3 is truly, truly incredible in terms of the dynamic range that it gives you, and it's very easy to grade. So good, Canon Log 3. And what about 1080p? Well, of course it has 1080p, but get this, up to 240 frames per second. No mention on detail, no mention whether it can do 120, and I suppose it would. No mention whether it can do 24, 25, 30, 50, 60, 100, 120, etc. But it can go up to 240 frames per second. All those other frame rates I mentioned, they should be able to do. And this is pretty exciting. But wait, there's more. It has dual card slots. No, not dual UHS 2 card slots, but basically copying the Canon EOS R5, and it's going to have the same body style as the R5 and the R6, and this will help keep costs down, obviously. It's going to have one CF Express Type B card slot. Just going to pause for dramatic purposes. CF Express card. CF Express Type B card in this camera. That's a big deal. This is definitely high-end APS-C. Wonder what the price is going to be. Anyhow, I'll get to availability and dates and all that stuff, but CF Express Type B card slot. And of course, it's going to have a UHS 2 card slot. Now, many of you might say, well, it'd be nice to have dual CF Express Type B card slots, but come on, let's face it. This is Canon. The only way you're going to get dual is if you spend $6,500 or more and you get their 1 series flagship. Even the R5 at $38.99 doesn't have dual CF Express type card slots. All right, now you might be wondering, well, when's the other shoe going to drop? What else is going on here? Well, I do have some opinions here, and I'll get to that in just a moment. One other thing I want to mention, date. It is supposed to be announced in August. August, you say? Yeah, August. I would expect middle of September at the earliest. we were told by Canon Rumors in a pretty reliable post just the other day that it's going to come in the fourth quarter. Last time I checked, August is definitely not part of the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter includes December, November, and October. So August is basically middle of the third quarter. So and that kind of had me wondering. Then I sort of looked at this differently. Now I looked at a little more closely. I looked at Canon Rumors, and you'll notice that this is a CR1. It hasn't been validated. When Canon puts out, or Canon Rumors puts out a CR1, basically what they're saying is, okay, it's a little bit more than complete conjecture, but it hasn't been validated. Take it as a rumor, take it with a grain of salt. But here's how I kind of look at these specifications. It looks like somebody took a look at the Canon 90D, the M6 Mark II, and the R6, and they kind of took some capabilities of each one and put it into a camera. And it certainly sounds plausible, but these are not leaked specifications. These are rumored specifications. 32.5 megapixel sensor, APS-C on the RF mount. Well, sure, I mean, that's easy, right? Because the 90D has it, the M6 Mark II has it. Now, if rumors are correct, the Fujifilm XH, the XH2 is also, well, not also, it's going to have a 40 megapixel APS-C sensor. So 32.5, while it was a huge deal when it came out a couple of years ago, doesn't look like it's going to be such a big deal now, but still 32.5 megapixels on an APS-C is still plenty of resolution. If this can produce high detail, if it can do 4K 60 with good detail, 1080p with good detail, hopefully it does 4K oversample 1080, that would be really good. And if it can provide the detail, well, I don't really care if it can do 40 or 32 or 26. Just give me really good detail for the stills, again, at 20 frames per second. But look at what the R6 can do. Again, 20 frames per second electronic. So a lot of these specifications, they don't seem like it's that much of a stretch that the R7 could have this, but I don't believe that these are leaked specifications. I think somebody somewhere has looked at all these cameras and said, you know what, for a high-end APS-C on the RF mount, this makes an awful lot of sense. I know some of you are thinking, it doesn't make sense to do an R7. There's not many people that are demanding this today. There's just come out with another camera. But I think there's enough demand for this camera for Canon to release it. And if you look at all the cameras that they're releasing high-end cameras, not low-end cameras. So that leads us to believe that this is not going to be priced like the Canon 90D, but considerably more, probably under $2,000. So I imagine a price point for this camera somewhere between, let's say $14.99 on the low side to $19.99 on the high side. But we'll just have to wait and see. So what do you think? What do you think of these specifications? Have they got you excited about the Canon EOS R7? We're finally starting to get a little bit of noise, and this is how it sometimes starts out. We get a CR1 or a CR0, but what you really want to watch out for is when Canon Rumors publishes something and it's a CR2 or a CR3, that means it's coming from known sources where the information has been validated, and that's the really, really big deal. Now, if you like this kind of stuff, you like knowing the latest rumors or leaked specifications, camera news, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe and choose all notifications. And then that way, as soon as I publish a video, you'll get a notification right away alerting you. So that way you stay up to date on the latest news and rumors. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon. The Canon EOS RP will have a Digic X processor, a 32 megapixel APS-C sensor on the RF mount, but wait until you get a load of the video specs. Details coming up, but first, I encourage you to subscribe and choose all notifications so you're kept informed on the latest camera news like this on various gear